I'm going to be honest. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be morbid. But, we're some of these greats we're not going to have forever. We're not going to have Charles Brewer. We're not going to have Bill McKeachie. I've gotten to know both of them a little bit, and I'm blessed by that. But I'd like to have conversations on the record, so to speak, just so I could share. So when you do that countdown, right, it's 3, 2, but don't say the 1. That's how the pros do it, right?
That's what I did, right?
I know you did, but I wanted to point out that you're very professional at this.
Well, thank you very much.
So welcome to the podcast. This is PsychSessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. And I am one of your podcast co-hosts, Eric Landrum, and my other it's not my other co-host, the other co-host.
The other co-host.
The host with the most is...
Garth Neufeld is my name.
And by the way, let's make sure that we got this right. It's Neufeld, and I've been pronouncing it all along, and I apologize because it's important to get someone's name right. So,
I never know how to use the word irony, but the ironic thing
is... Here we go.
Yeah, we're just going to go for it.
Where's your sign?
That you're actually correct, right? Is that the German background of Neufeld is Neufeld. And that's how you would say it. So when I go to Germany, which it sounds like I go to Germany a lot. I've been there one time.
Right.
Or if I talk to people who have German ancestry, it's Neufeld. So very good.
Well, but I did study German in high school and for a little bit in college. But at the same time, it's not right if it's not the way you want to hear it.
Yeah.
And so your personal preference trumps, careful there, Deutschland über alles. And so, we're not going to... We're gonna follow your preference here, and not those nasty Germans.
Well, thank you, Eric Landrum.
Right, I love that. I love what you did there.
Mm-hmm.
I see that. And so for today's podcast, we're actually recording from the lovely recording studios in Garth's home. Sadly, the better 2/3 are not here. I'd love to meet them in person. I look forward to that someday.
Yeah.
And so those folks are out of the house. Surprisingly, it is a rainy afternoon here in Seattle. I don't know if you've heard, but that doesn't happen very often. And so it's a good day to be inside because of that unexpected rain.
Somebody told me recently that Seattleites have some sort of amnesia where they always forget that summer doesn't start till the 4th of July.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, and that's what gets us through, though. You understand how that works.
It's maybe Groundhog's Day where you're reliving the same rainy day over and over again.
Kind of feels that way. It doesn't get to me. It gets to a lot of folks around here, but I'm okay with it.
And some people love the rain. I mean, Some people obviously must love the weather. And I would imagine that when it's really nice, it's like a super treat.
Yeah, it sure is.
You've been deprived of chocolate all year long, and you finally get it on Easter. You're thrilled because you haven't had it. So
it reminds me of when I lived in Canada growing up, that if it ever got to above freezing, if it ever got to 32 degrees, there's always a guy on the corner without a shirt on.
Exactly. I'm sure at a hockey game you'll see, even at...
maybe that's where it came from. Maybe it was hockey games.
Not so much Super Bowl. Those are normally warmer weather or indoors. But the NFC, AFC playoff games are oftentimes cold weather, Green Bay or Kansas City. And you will see some fan, usually a young man, who his brain has not fully developed yet by age 25, with his shirt off and with some sort of thing painted.
But I'm talking about fully developed brains and no alcohol. I'm talking about that there's just like this celebration of life that happens where it's like, it is 34 degrees and the sun's out. I'm going to take my shirt off.
I understand the phrase sun's out, guns out. I've heard that one before. But here's the thing. I cannot think of a scenario where I would be outside voluntarily with my shirt off. That's just not going to happen. If someone said, it'll save a life if you take off your shirt, yeah, maybe I would do that. But I have a hard time imagining that. But that's my thing. That's a me thing.
You're shirt on at the pool guy.
I'm shirt on in the shower. What do you mean? I don't want to see that
right.
stuff in the morning.
Okay.
Anyway, let's. We actually do have a slight, I would say, agenda or some talking points for today's podcast.
Sure do.
And so I'd like to start, Garth, with two versions of origin stories. I think one is the origin of the podcast, how you had the idea, I had the idea, and then eventually we had the idea. And then I want to circle back to what got you interested in psychology? What got you interested in higher ed? What made you go down that path? And I'll try to answer that one too.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about this podcast first. Because it's not about a podcast. It's about these shared ideas that we have that we find, a shared passion in. And I have, for many, many years, really enjoyed just conversating with other teachers of psychology. And when I started talking with Sue Franz a number of years ago, I used to work with her at Highline College, and she has been kind of a face in the national teaching of psychology.
Absolutely.
A contributor. I said that weirdly. Contributor.
It was a Canadian thing.
Yeah,
I just let it go.
We can just let it go. She's been a contributor, in some really meaningful ways in the national teaching of psychology circles, and so I have really just enjoyed gleaning information from her. In some ways, she has just been a really great sounding board for me over this 10 years in my early career as a psychology teacher. And as that relationship has grown, and I've really enjoyed these talks, it just struck me as we were having a conversation, maybe just a little less than a year ago, that other teachers of psychology might enjoy these kinds of talks. Sometimes our talks are really, really practical. So we're talking about, this new way to teach, or some evidence-based way to teach, and we're discussing how you might implement that in your class. And so I'm sitting here talking about her. I think we were talking about interteaching or something like that, and it just struck me that a podcast would be a great way to get this information out to other people. To which she said to me, "Podcast? That's a great idea. Eric Landrum talked to me about this a while ago." And she said, "You guys should get together." And so I emailed you.
That's awesome. And Sue is, she's an amazing networker, knows what's going on the national level, at many levels, high school, community college, postgraduate, whatever. And so she's actually an amazing connector in that way. So years ago, I had this notion of, I wanted to see what master teachers teaching looked like. In an unlimited financial world, I would have gotten a grant. I would have driven from school to school, and I would have recorded a lecture, a class session of some of the great teachers that we both know around the country. So, I'd give anything to have sat in one of Charles Brewer's research methods classes and watched him teach about something, or Bill Buskist, or, Bill McKeechee at Michigan, Jane Hallinan in Florida. Just these master teachers that I'm truly blessed to know a little bit and get to be able to talk with from time to time. And as I pursued that idea, I talked to a number of people about it. And, it would probably take a sabbatical. It would probably take a lot of driving and coordination. And then I had this notion, this may be too much backstory. You stop me if you've heard this. I had this idea of, well, what if I could package up a video camera, a tripod, and an instruction set and send it from school to school and have them record? I would much rather be there in person because of that personal connection. And that seemed unwieldy, so I let that go for a while. And then I started to think, I'd just like to have a conversation with some of these folks. I'm going to be honest. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be morbid. But, we're some of these greats we're not going to have forever. We're not going to have Charles Brewer. We're not going to have Bill McKeechee. I've gotten to know both of them a little bit, and I'm blessed by that. But I'd like to have conversations on the record, so to speak, just so I could share. 20 years from now, we'll be talking about them, knowing them, but new faculty members, early career psychologists at that time, won't ever have met them. They might read about them or hear stories about them. So, my point of the podcast is not to memorialize necessarily, but just to capture, what's going on in the best teaching minds right now in North America, and just try to grab that and record it. And so I talked to Sue about that maybe a year and a half ago. And then Sue's wife, Verla, I talked to about, how do you frame a podcast? We went back and forth on email for a while. And Verla is always helpful in whatever she's involved with. And I love both those guys dearly. I really do. And so, it's a bit, it's a big job for one person to think about the technology, the equipment, arranging an interview. Can you do it over the phone? Do you have to be at a conference together? Do you fly to a location? And I just kind of put it on the back burner.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a good idea, but I just didn't know how to pull it off on my own.
Right.
Without some funding and some time.
Well, and this is one of the great things that happens, I think, in teaching, but also in any kind of maybe creative endeavor, is that when you meet somebody who has this shared passion, it seems to energize the work.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
I think we experience a lot of that, not only in these kinds of maybe a podcast project or something like that, but whether it's a task force or whether it is, just a talk that we're giving or whatever it is.
Well, it's great to have to know someone who knows things that I don't know and has skills that I don't have. So so that we can share the responsibility, we can share that need to figure out a podcast and scripting and putting it on iTunes and the recording and the technical side and editing. It's just it's great to have someone to collaborate with, but I think there's another layer to it. I think it makes us step up our game. And so, Garth, I'll just be honest with you. And so in doing this, I want this thing to be the best quality possible. And what happens is that I don't want to let you down. And so not only are we collaborating, but I want to make sure that you see my best work. And so I'm going to work hard to never miss a deadline. I'm going to work hard to do my piece because we're collaborating, but also because of our friendship. And I just don't want to let down my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, it's a really good motivator for sure for any project.
And it's a wholesome, intrinsic motivator.
Yeah.
We're not writing promotion and tenure on this. We're not writing the next NSF funded grant on this.
Right.
We're doing this because we want to give psychology away in this way.
Yeah. And, I was just noting when you were talking about, we're not doing this to memorialize people, but I think we're doing this because we know that some of the guests that are going to be on this podcast are going to give some amazing pieces of advice and information, and they're just really entertaining people. But every once in a while, I suspect that a lot of these podcasts are going to be moderately interesting for people. Not like I'm shooting for the stars, right?
Okay,
but
let's see. Low expectations, and we hope to meet or exceed them, right?
Exactly. But every once in a while, I think about some of these people that we have lined up in our heads, and I think there's going to be some magic that happens every once in a while that and someone is going to take that podcast and say, you got to listen to this podcast from this person about teaching, and this is exactly where you're at. Maybe it's an early career psychologist, and it's like, this is the advice you need for that interview that you're going to go into or that job application or whatever it is.
Right, and we might have someone who's got cutting edge research that's about to be published in TOP or Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in Psychology. It's not even out there yet. That ECP person who's on the job hears our podcast, goes into an interview, and says, I can tell you about some new teaching innovation. As it turns out, based on this article that's going to come out in Teaching of Psychology, flipped classroom really isn't as effective as we thought it was.
Wow.
And they could come away with that. The other piece that you've prompted me to think about is I have a colleague, I have great colleagues at Boise State, but one I'm thinking about is April Mazurek. She's in her second year at Boise State. And she and I have some really delightful, long conversations about teaching. I want to have someone like her on the podcast as well, because I think she sees our profession obviously from a different perspective, and just not only as a young psychologist, but also as a female psychologist. And I've really tried to become aware. I know I'm never going to understand from someone else's perspective, but I want to become aware of, I guess, a couple of things. The privilege that I have as a white male professor, but also to be sensitive to the struggles of other people from other walks of life or cultural, historical backgrounds, and and be sensitive to that. Let me give you one really quick example.
Sure.
That I use all the time at Boise State. I'm in the hall. I don't know about you guys, but hallways are where all the action is. We all have these offices with chairs, but we stand in the hallway and we talk. I was in the hallway once with my colleague and my friend, Dr. Mary Pritchard, and there's a student coming around the corner. She and I are out in the hallway chatting, and the student says, "Hi, Dr. Landrum," and the student says, "Hi, Mrs. Pritchard." And yeah, exactly. And so I gently stopped the student and I said, "No, that's Dr. Pritchard." And I think there's some pretty good data out there about, the differential in how female and male college professors are treated. And so there are challenges out there that faculty members have that I can't fully understand or appreciate, but I want to try to. And I think where I'm headed here is that the diversity of guests that I think we'll have over time with the podcast will allow us to, I hope, to hear every single possible perspective. And I want to hear about challenges that I haven't heard yet. And for whatever reason in me, I want to try to solve them. I talk with my wife, Lisa, about this sometimes. She'll say, "I don't need you to fix it. I just want to tell you about it." And I get that. I understand that. But I hear a problem.
You're the first man who has ever had that problem, by the way.
Well, I'm glad we've got it in recorded history now,
Good,
Yeah. And so, I want to try to solve it. So anyway, so let me switch the gears a little bit. So that's the origin story. And so essentially Sue put us in contact with one another. And I will tell you sitting here now, the reason that we sound so good is because of Garth. The reason that we've come together is because of Garth, because he really took the lead on this. And let's just be really clear from the start, I'm the second author. So this is really his deal, and I'm so proud of it. I'm proud to be part of it. And I'll hang around as long as he'll have me. And when he's ready to replace me, I'll expect a pink slip in my mailbox.
Right.
So when you get ready to upgrade, you let me know.
Yeah.
It's kind.
We're gonna grow we're gonna grow this thing together. This is gonna be fun. Yeah.
Podcast host 2.0. It's okay for you to upgrade.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Let me ask you. I'm gonna switch gears and stop talking here for a minute. Let's talk about origin story in psychology. So, a little boy growing up in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. Did I get it right?
Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Almost close.
Yeah.
What gets you interested going to college, first gen? What makes you choose psychology over something else? What's that story?
Yeah, this is a fun story for me. I get to connect with a lot. I teach at a community college, and I get to connect with a lot of my students over advising with my experience, because I was one of those students who I really enjoyed the social part of school, and not so much the academic part. The academic part I could do. I never worked hard. I wasn't one of those students who worked really hard. And when I took off after high school for a year, traveled Australia, New Zealand, and then came back to the University of Saskatchewan, and I started to do. I mean, as a person who didn't have a family history of going to school, the people I had to look up to were my two older sisters, and they had both done University of Saskatchewan, and they'd both done it in business, what the U of S calls commerce, but they did it in business. And so I thought, well, I guess I'm doing business, and that's what I started going into. I started taking classes, started taking accounting classes. I kind of like math, so that worked for me. And then I ran into a microeconomics class, which is, I don't know if you've taken a microeconomics class.
Have not.
Well, it was, here's the piece that really got me, which was that I had never failed anything in my life before, and I failed my first test in microeconomics. I think I would really enjoy it now, but at the time, I just was not understanding what they were talking about. So I failed it. I knew it was not going to get better, and it was the only class I ever failed, the only test I ever failed, and that really made me think about, what do I want to do? Not what should I do, not what did my sisters do, not even what is going to be a secure job, because that's a value I think that was passed down from my family, which is, find something secure that you can make a living at. What I went with was my heart, and what that said to me was that psychology was really, really interesting. And so I looked at what it would take to kind of change directions from business to psychology, and never looked back after that. So I got my undergraduate in psychology, and then moved down to California, and marriage and family therapy was the next step. Again, I didn't know what it was like to apply to graduate schools. I didn't. Visiting different places was not on my radar, and I don't even know if I could have done that financially.
So why California?
Why California?
Family or?
Well, I had been down to California. I've got family down in California, but actually the school that I was going to, my heritage is Mennonite. And there was a Mennonite university down in Fresno, California called Fresno Pacific University, and they offered scholarship for students specifically who were coming down from Canada.
Wow.
And so it was really a practical thing for me. And I don't even know if I could have told you what a marriage and family therapist was versus maybe other kinds of careers like counseling, clinical careers, those kinds of things, but or degrees. And started taking classes, and it was a really good fit. I was very fortunate to kind of just stumble into something that was really good for me. And so I thought I was going to be a therapist. And I talked about this a little bit in the last podcast. I did all the licensing and had some success at it. I felt like it was a good fit for me. And then I was doing an internship at Alliant International University. They have different campuses, different cities. And they had a big clinic, and I was doing a couple different rotations there. And somebody I had met who was also doing rotations there said, hey, there is a school called San Joaquin Valley College, and they have this aviation campus. Now, Alliant University is right across from the airport in Fresno, California.
Okay.
And there is a hangar that San Joaquin Valley College has, and that's where they train students to work on airplanes, to be mechanics. Well, it turns out they need some social science credit. So the job was offered to me to go and teach these aviation mechanics intro psych. And I had never taught anything in my life. And so I was looking forward to it and prepped it as much as I could prep it. And we need to talk about this sometime. We are teachers who were never trained to teach, which is kind of interesting
we'll circle back
to me.
If not today.
Right. Another time.
Day. Right.
Yeah. So I went to this airport hangar, and taught probably 20 students, and the class was a 5-hour block on Friday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. For I think 10 weeks or something like that.
That sounds brutal.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was. I did that for a few years, and then my wife Danielle and I were going to move up. We wanted to move out of Fresno. We wanted to move up to the Pacific Northwest into Seattle. And so I started applying for clinical jobs, and I started looking at teaching jobs just because I now had that skill set. I thought it was a skill set at the time. I think I probably wasn't very skilled at it now that I look back. But we were going to move up there. So I applied for some different jobs, and I'm telling you, I had the dream job clinical offer from a really, really great little practice that was going on in Bellevue, Washington. And they gave me a job offer, and at the same time, Highline College in Seattle gave me a job offer teaching. So I had this fork in the road. It was clinical or it was teaching, and I took the teaching job and never looked back. So that's
not even in the rear view mirror didn't look back?
Well, no, I still have it in my head. I'm still going to return to doing some therapy eventually.
And certainly you could return if you wanted to. So before I do my side of the aisle, may I entertain? Will you entertain any follow-up questions?
Oh, absolutely.
So I took a couple notes. Well, so you mentioned your two older sisters. Mm-hmm. So 3 sibs altogether?
3.
So you're the youngest.
I'm the youngest.
Only male.
True.
Okay, we will circle back to the birth order issue.
Okay.
At some point in the future.
Good.
But then you used another word that I think I've heard a lot of people, even in interviews and book chapters of biographical descriptions. You said you kind of stumbled into psychology. You kind of stumbled into, and obviously it's your life story, and I'm not going to debate it. But I think there's variations on this phrase. a prepared mind is prepared for a chance favors the prepared mind, or something to that effect. And I've heard and I've read Bill McKeachie talk about this, and where he talks about it was, he'll call it luck. And I think Jane Hallinan was the person who said it's more than just luck. Working hard and making connections and looking at your life from different perspectives and talking to folks. It might feel like you were stumbling because you didn't know the end point when you were in the middle of it, but it wasn't by total random chance. You were working hard and taking advantage of the opportunities afforded you would be my best guess.
Sure.
But it's your story, and I'm not going to edit it. This is not an APA format.
As I look back at it, I just feel so fortunate. I feel like everything, every step has been a gift along the way, which is just really amazing to look back on.
That's exactly what Bill McKeachie would say. It was, I was just lucky. I talked to some people. I did some hard work. I was just lucky, and gently, I think Jane had it exactly right. It's more than just luck. I'm not going to argue with you.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. So I'll give you the nickel tour for me. So a decent student in high school. So I'm growing up Northern Illinois. Go Cubs, go Sox. Not Sox. Go Cubs, go Bears. Really, as a North Sider. And pretty good student in school. I really liked math, and I was actually, as a high school student, pretty good in math. And so I applied to 2 schools, one large, one small. I ended up going to the small private liberal arts school, Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois. No, that's not Monmouth University in Monmouth, New Jersey. It's Monmouth, Illinois. So West Central Illinois, small private liberal arts school, Presbyterian founded, but not really that strong at the time when I was there. Very small school, 640 students total. So the psychology department has 3 full-time professors, all white males. I actually, so I go to Monmouth as a math major. I thought I was pretty good at it in college, and so I go there as a math major and literally take Calc 1, Calc 2, and change my major. And so I just wasn't good at it. The lowest grades I ever got were in that Calc 1 and Calc 2 class, and that's not an auspicious start when you're going to major in something. So I switched my major to speech communication theater arts. Loved that. I had been in plays. I had done debate in high school, and so I kept with that in college. Thought about adding accounting, business major. Took accounting 1, hated it. Debits, credits, 2-column system. Oh, I hated that class. I just couldn't wait for it to be over.
I love that class.
I'm glad you did, and we need accountants. This world needs that. I mean,
I could have been an accountant if it weren't for microeconomics.
Price Waterhouse isn't doing that good these days, but you know what? They'll come back.
You're right.
But we need good accountants. We really do. And so,
at the time of this podcast, by the way, people may not remember what you're referring to.
That's true. I just did the thing I said we shouldn't do.
No, that's fine.
We shouldn't have dated references.
We should remember the Academy Awards for an entire year, I think, right? In our pop culture. Yeah. I hope we're talking a lot about the Academy Awards in September.
There's going to be a YouTube video about it, I'm sure, if there isn't already. But then I added psychology. So I bounced around. I kept speech communication theater arts as a major. And actually my second major was psychology. And, I wish I could tell you the story that I wanted to help people. I wish I could tell you that my motivation was, I just want to help people and change the world. I can't say that, honestly. I saw 3 role models, and I get the privilege. I understand that, but I saw 3 white males who were outstanding teachers, dedicated to the craft. They're at a small private liberal arts school. They're still doing research to their credit. I saw that, and I'll be honest, I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like Dr. Maliska, Dr. Wright, Dr. Hastings. I wanted to be that knowledgeable and learned and intelligent and articulate and kind and thoughtful as I saw them in the classroom and in their office hours, and that was my role model. And so I majored in psychology, double majored, and then let's keep a good thing going. So I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I talked about this a little bit the last podcast, and I don't know if I stumbled, but I defaulted because I love school so much. I thought I was a pretty good student in high school. I became a good student in the right subjects in college. And so what do you do if you want to avoid life? You become a college professor, because that way you're not out in the real world. You're still on campus. You get summers off. You have a week off at Thanksgiving. You have couple weeks off at Christmas, or a month. You have, summer break. What an amazing kind of schedule to be on. And so I wish I could say my origin story. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to become the teacher of teachers, the master of masters. No, I saw role models that I wanted to emulate. By the way, the year I graduated from Monmouth, which was 1984, and I did that on purpose so that you really couldn't figure it out. 1985, they had a bumper crop of psychology majors that year. There were actually eight. Eight majors that year, and typically in a typical year, I think they had 3 or 4. And so that's really my origin story for psychology, and that's where it headed.
It reminds me of something that's been, I think, meaningful to me as I've reflected on the process of becoming a teacher, becoming a better teacher. Because in my story, even when I took it was a 1-year position at Highline, which I did, Highline College, which I did for 8 years in a one-year position before I got a tenure track position after that. But for those first few years at Highline, I don't know that I don't even know that I knew what I was doing, even as a teacher at that point in time as I look back. And it wasn't until I started to have the language for talking about teaching that I started to also have the passion for talking about teaching. And it wasn't until I started building relationships with faculty in my department in order to have some of these conversations. And what I've learned through those really important formative relationships in my department, because I think that's where those instructors that you looked to and said, that's what I want to be. There's something in me that resonates with something that they're doing. That's kind of how I felt about the department I was a part of. So departments are really, really important, I think, for young faculty. And then now that I have talked to just a lot of people all over the United States who teach psychology, who are passionate about it, it's something that doesn't stop. Even though you maybe develop into a better teacher, what I identify is something that I read a book once by a guy named Robert Johnson, and it's called Inner Gold. And he said that when you find gold in another person, he's like, you want to mine it out of them, right? It's like this valuable thing that you're resonating with. And that is like the best metaphor that I can come up with. Sometimes I will talk to 3 people at a conference and I'll have really nice conversations with 2 of them. And then the third person I'm talking to, I'm like, you have something that I need, and I don't even know what it is yet, but there's something, there's a passion, there is a knowledge, there's an expertise, there's something that I'm really resonating with. And that's always been really helpful for me. And I just hear a little bit of that in your story.
Well, I think, to add one other little tiny layer, I think it's also about attitude as well. And so there are some amazing people who have that inner gold, but you can't get past the exterior attitude of whatever it might be. Maybe it might be sadness. Maybe it might be cockiness. Maybe it might be just self-loathing. So sometimes you can't, or maybe it's just they're too promotional. I'm not going to say the guy's name, but there's somebody in psychology that goes around on the circuit right now. I'll tell you when we're off the air. Who just promotes himself way too much.
Yeah, okay.
And wants to come to your convention and give a talk. And what,
that's not me, right?
It's not you.
Okay,
no. You would never you would never self-promote in a way that's off-putting. And this person self-promotes in a way that's off-putting. He wrote one book about one topic, which I'm sure is probably a very good book, and calls himself the world-leading expert on that topic based on one book. I'm not so sure he's published in the literature. I'd have to double-check that. But anyway, I find myself drawn to people with a certain attitude. And so I don't think I'll ever call myself an expert. If someone labels me an expert, I may or may not correct them. But I think it's kind of off-putting for me. Hey, I'm an expert in XYZ. So in addition to that gold, there has to be a gold delivery system that's palatable to me. And if you've got great information, but I got to suffer through a lot of crap to hear you talk about it, I might go, I'm out. It's not worth the the mining fees are just I'm trying to milk this analogy. The mining fees are just going to be too detrimental to get anything good out of it.
Right. And I think it's the reason why it feels like to me it's the reason why we need to be in good friendships and relationships with other teachers of psychology, or maybe just other people who will tell us when the ego is in the way of the work, right? In the way of our own development, or keeping maybe even, and what I hear you saying is this person might actually have something really good to offer.
Absolutely.
And you want to help people get out of the way, which is, again, a point of this podcast is to bring these people in who get out of their own way.
And did you just slip some MFT therapy stuff? What I hear you saying? Are you going to go Carl Rogers on me? So that's how you feel.
You weren't trained, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Of course I wasn't trained, but I've read chapter 14 of every intro psych textbook about, therapies. And so I can,
No, that's just me getting excited. Is that
what it is?
Yeah, sure.
So what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
So Garth, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it makes me feel awesome.
Or is it the 15th cup of coffee? Is that the thing that makes you feel
I drank
awesome?
a lot of coffee today, didn't I?
Well, if you could mainline caffeine, I think you'd be slapping on your veins, trying to find one that could take the coffee directly.
Yeah, well, there's the pot calling the kettle black.
Well, no, I think you want to have the pot call the kettle the whatever color, delicious color Diet Mountain Dew is.
Right.
Green,
nobody knows that color because
green.
it's not real.
It's the color of antifreeze. Come on now, we all know that it's the color of antifreeze.
What else we got going on here?
I got a couple things. May I follow up? Permission to follow up more. So, tell me about New Zealand. Tell me about your experience there, because I've actually been to New Zealand. I only visited there 1 week. It was delightful.
Have you? Okay, yeah. Man, I spent most of my time in the North Island of New Zealand, and I heard that there is some more research on gap years and just getting away after high school, and I have some real opinions, and I don't know where the evidence is on them, but I have some real opinions about just the American education system, or I guess the Western education system, and how much pressure we put on students to find their, to pick a major and to find a career, by the time they're 20 years old or something like that. I really enjoyed just getting away for a while, and when I came back to Canada from New Zealand, I felt like I had a little more maturity, a little more direction, definitely a little more life experience.
Sure.
I got lost in Australia. We didn't have cell phones back then, right? And I got lost in Australia for a couple days, couldn't find friends that I was supposed to meet up with. And one of the greatest experiences, and probably has set the course for a lot of international travel, where I don't freak out when something doesn't go right for me now. But New Zealand was a really valuable experience, and I have a feeling that those early, and I was talking to you about this off air earlier, but that there are life experiences that we have that really we may not even know the value of them to what we're doing presently. We might not even be able to articulate it, but I do believe that just that experience traveling overseas, and it's there's a lot of. It's really not that different from Canada or the United States, but just that experience of being away from everything familiar, I think that gives you a skill set. That gives you some sort of ability that will eventually translate into teaching and translate into whatever it is we put our time and effort and energies to now.
Well, I think it's a great analogy for our students in our classroom. And so, the teacher has developed hopefully some expertise over time or some confidence in the content. But now think about, that student in a foreign land. So, think about you being dropped in New Zealand without a cell phone, without the access for 2 days. Now think about our students being dropped into a brand new course, never heard this language, never heard this terminology, trying to be successful, a lot of other things going on. I think we sometimes forget about the stressors and the skill set that we want our students to leave with, but do we give them the scaffolding to actually be successful?
You may have just given me my first lecture story for next quarter. No, I think it's a great way to think about it.
I think about this a little bit, and so I'm coming in and I want my students to be able to do SPSS and research methods, and it's completely foreign to them. It looks like a spreadsheet, but it isn't in some ways. And so I think about this sometimes when I'm trying to learn new software. So if I'm trying to learn how to use Pull Everywhere in my class, I struggle with the software. I get frustrated. I have to remember my students are going to do the same thing. So what can I give them to help? How can I help them anticipate and maybe even avoid some of those struggles? But at the same time, having the struggles is a good thing. You figured it out. Mm-hmm. You survived. You thrived, and you took away. So sometimes having students go off and struggle and get upset about how hard something is could actually, in the long run, be very beneficial. So I want to circle back to New Zealand for a minute. So my good buddy, who you'll hear me talk about a lot, Regan Gurung, he was there in 2012 on a sabbatical, and he took his wife Martha, the kids Liam and Melina went with him. So all four were in New Zealand, and so I took a week at spring break that March of 2012 and went over there and spent a week with them, which was great because they had a house and they knew the routine. They'd been there for 3 months. They had a car. It was awesome. I mean, it was just in North Island, mostly Auckland. Took a day and a half trip to Rotorua, and so. I'll come back to this someday if you want to. But in Auckland, I was really fortunate. I was invited to give a talk at the University of Auckland in the Department of Psychology. It was about noontime, and Regan and I and Martha left straight from that talk, and we went to bungee jump off the Auckland Bridge. Yeah. So I have the video. It's on my YouTube channel. I have a T-shirt at home. I have the little, keychain with the bungee cord example. So yeah, we bungee jumped in Auckland. So good.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
And hold on, if I wanted to see this video, where would I go on YouTube?
Just search for Eric Landrum. I have a channel, and I don't monetize it, so everything's free on there.
Wait, so all three of you went? All three of you bungee?
Okay, interesting. Yes, but the first day, Regan and I did it, and Martha, his wife, kind of watched from the sideline and kind of, I think it would be fair to say she poo-pooed it. She said, "Oh, what's the big deal? Why would you do something like that? Why would you spend that money?" But once so you pay a premium package and you get video, you get pictures, and once we got that and showed it to her, about 3 days later we went back and she bungee jumped and she got the whole thing. And it's not the kind of thing. I mean, I know we all live with stereotypes. You look at a guy like me, I'm not a bungee jumper. You wouldn't look at me and go, "Hey, that guy likes bungee jumping." I would do it again. It was great. And the thing is, I went from the Auckland Department of Psychology, so I was dressed up. So I had dress slacks on, dress shoes. I had a button-up collared shirt on.
And we can see this in the video.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Oh, it's awesome. And Regan and I were walking up the bridge, and you really have to walk up the bridge, and you're tethered onto something. And there's construction workers there give us a hard time. He's humming the tune to Danger Zone from.
Of course he is. Yeah.
He's got a tune going on all the time, and we're buckled up with our helmet. Oh my gosh, it was a great time. It was great.
So that just I love these kinds of ideas because I actually think as you're talking, I'm thinking, how can I use this story? How can I really use these stories with my students and help them to think about psychology maybe a little bit differently, or any kind of class? But
right.
Like I'm spitballing here, but on the first day of class, what if students came up with hey, I want you to come up with a story where you were just over your head. You got thrown into something, and I want you to think, because on the first day of class, sometimes we might ask questions for ice-breaking purposes that are, everybody's bored by. But what if you ask them a really meaningful question, like something you were thrown into that you and maybe it didn't even turn out successfully or whatever, but they can reflect on that. And then you start to frame psychology in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times you're going to get students who say, yeah, and I came through that and I got this skill. And I came through that and I didn't know I could do it and I did it. And then talk about and use that as a reminder for, when things get hard in the quarter to revisit that. I had some students in an abnormal psychology class this last quarter, and I had put them into groups for these presentations that they were going to do. And it was very, very early in class. It might have been the first class. And I said, hey, get to know each other and tell your group members what strength you bring to a group.
Nice.
It was really cool to hear some of them say, I am really good at putting together PowerPoint presentations, or I'm good at talking in front of people, or I'm, these strengths that they brought, you could see them light up. And I had a student come to my office halfway through the quarter and say that was a really, really good exercise for her.
Well, I just to piggyback on that, I think our students in our psych, either they're psych majors or they're in an intro to psych class, they don't understand. They have they are underconfident. So when I'm teaching research methods, they've had a statistical methods class before that one. They don't realize how much they know, and they they know it, but they lack confidence in it, and so there's self-doubt. And I actually have started talking to my students every semester about try to stop undercutting yourself. You know this. You demonstrated this in a prior class. You haven't forgotten it, but you're so afraid of being wrong or saying the wrong thing out loud when there's no penalty. I especially in the stats research method sequence, for me, it's all about building confidence. The concepts are not overly difficult, but it's about building. Can you do this? Can you formulate a hypothesis? Can you select the appropriate statistic? Those are the things that I think our students need to have confidence built around.
Rabbit trail. Do you like the idea of stats and then methods, or what's the ideal way for students to take those?
I think there's a little bit of data out there on preferred methods. A lot of schools are doing a 1-year sequence where they're combined. There actually are some textbooks out there. Our good friends Maureen McCarthy and Barney Bynes have a textbook out there on the combined stat research methods. For me, because at Boise State, I think about it as stats first, then methods. Could you make the opposite case? Of course you could.
Sure.
I mean, you could. Maybe you got to formulate a hypothesis before you can ever start to think about how to analyze it, or you've got to understand the tool. But
Yeah, it seems to me in my experience that students who take stat and then take research methods, that they'll do better in the. It doesn't matter which one they take first; they'll always do better in the second class than the first.
So you have hit on, I think, one of the maxims of higher education. Congratulations! You've just uncovered.
Where are the bells and whistles
Easter egg
right now?
We should have a sound effect.
You really are pushing for the sound effects.
Oh, there will be sound effects. Trust me, there will be reverb, burp, burp, burp. So I get this question all the time. Should I take, this or that? Should I be an RA, a research assistant, and then take methods, or should I take research methods then be an RA? And I think you have just hit on it. And what I tell students all the time is, it really doesn't matter. The second one gets the benefit. So whatever thing you take first, there's benefit for the second thing or event or practice or occasion.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be interesting I'd like to talk to somebody who teaches stats at my institution to see if they see the reverse. I imagine they do.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of a little study right now that'll get presented at a conference soon about the effect of prerequisites. So what are faculty opinions about prerequisites? This will be an unpopular opinion, but I'll share it anyway. I think they make almost little to no difference. I think there's very little evidence that students carry forward something from one semester to the next. Do this the next time you walk into a classroom. Ask students, don't ask them what they remember from the last semester or the last term or the last quarter. Ask them, do you even remember the courses that you had? And so, to think that in a 11 or 15-week course of research of intro to psychology, that they're going to remember anything from that in a meaningful, deep fashion, I think is really optimistic. And I'll share one more thing too while I'm on a rant. I hate the word cover, as in we're going to cover this today in class. I literally think about the word cover as I'm going to lay something over it and cover something up. Because when we run in to cover the motivation and emotion chapter, because we said we would before test number 3, what are we really doing?
Interesting.
I think we're giving short shrift to whatever the topic is we're covering. And I get it. I have a bias here. It's really pretty clear. I'd rather take a handful of deep dives. I'd rather students leave intro psych with 5, 6, 7, whatever the magic number is, ideas that will help change their lives and the lives of those who they love, than have been exposed to 800 terms in an 800-page, $50 textbook.
Right. Yeah, and it's
Why,
one of the
why cover?
It's one of the
Duck and cover.
It's one of the passion, the topics that you really bring passion to, and I think I really spent any kind of significant time with you 3 years ago when you were invited to speak at TIP Northwest here in Seattle, and I think you talked about skills at that point in time, and so this sounds like a lot of that same passion and opinion and content.
Sorry, I'll come up with new stuff really soon.
Yeah, please, come on.
Rehash.
So I'm so glad you covered that for us.
Oh man, that hurts.
No, that
hurts like a cold cup of coffee. I'm telling you, that
when
hurts.
you said that, when we were talking about like the gold inside of people, when you gave that talk, and I know that you probably had been thinking about that for years, and you had probably been in conversations with other people or whatever, but when you gave that talk, it resonated with me so much that, and I've heard so many good talks. I think about Beth Morling's talk at NITOP a year and some ago, and she talked about tattoos on the mind, maybe something like that. And she talked about hitting, I think it's also been called bottleneck concepts or something like that, and really just covering a couple things that you go diving deep, get a couple things that students can take. But I think even more than that content, those, I really want them to know what an experiment is, and I really want them to know what classical conditioning is or whatever. I think more important than that is the skills that students are bringing with them, because that is what they are. And we're in my house, and so I guess that is the FedEx guy who's dropping something off.
Awesome. Amazon.com.
Yeah,
more
there you
technology.
go. It's like Christmas. It might even be for this podcast.
Every day is like Christmas. Well, so I've never heard Beth Morling give that talk, but I heard about that talk. That's what a good talk it was. And so, that notion of you repeating it 3 times and saying it over and over, what if intro psych students left the class understanding how psychologists think, as opposed to memorizing or regurgitating 600 terms for a multiple choice test? And we can come back to that someday. Because
you're right, and I think that's what she was talking about more so than a piece of content, as she was talking about skill.
Right. Yeah, some sort of skill, or thinking, what if students left intro psych with the tools to be a better parent?
Yeah.
To understand enough of developmental psychology and observational learning and classical and operant conditioning. What if they left with understanding positive reinforcement versus punishment, and where it's effective and where it's ineffective, understanding scales of reinforcement, scales of reinforcement and shaping. And, what if they left understanding how to navigate workplace relationships and how to deal with a boss and a subordinate and a super, I've shifted. This is not popular around the country, I'm sure, but, you know the old saying, it's this one time where we have the most exposure to the most people. If they're not going to take another psychology class for the rest of their life, what would we want to make sure they come away with? Let's say they're going to drop out of college the next semester. What's the essential piece of psychology that might actually help improve their lives? And I don't care if they remember the exact term or not, but can they apply that term to a real life scenario?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of...
And by the way, it's hard. It's really hard.
Sure is.
It's really hard. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. As many, I hope many faculty are in the year 2017. I'm doing a lot more active learning in my classes with my students, and a lot of that is about creating really good discussion questions and having students really connect with each other on those things. Usually there's a different levels of critical thinking in a first year psychology class, but you put those people together and they get to pick up, students who have maybe less ability to think critically, they get it modeled for them by other students. And now you've got a skill, and you can go into kind of any 200 level class with that skill in hand. But it's funny because that is not the skill that we're assessing. We're assessing. We're assessing content at an intro level, it seems to me.
It's, content is, of the 5 APA goals, it's goal number 1, and it's certainly important.
There are other goals?
Yeah, there actually are other goals, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's see if I can get them in order. Critical thinking and scientific inquiry, let's see, I think 3 is global and sociocultural awareness, 4 is communication, 5 is professional development.
Almost right. I think 3 and 4 are reversed,
Did I
but
reverse
somebody.
them? Yeah. Well, I'm doing that from scratch. Not that anybody can see that, but
And I only know
because
because I was on number 3 communication at
thank
Snap.
you. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, you and the Steve True Super Troopers.
Yeah, that was fun.
You guys had
we got to
it all-
get Steve on this.
You
thing.
guys had it all done before you guys even got there. I think you just played in your room. I think
That's
That's
right.
what Regan and Jane told me.
Oh my god.
So you've hit the nail on the head for another series of podcasts about assessment. I think generally speaking, college faculty, with a couple of exceptions, are not very good at assessment. I think English department faculty are very good at assessing writing skills because that's their bread and butter for the folks who do that. But we don't measure critical thinking at graduation. We don't know what our students are leaving their college or university experience with. You're familiar with the foundational and the baccalaureate indicators. We don't know what skill set those community college students are leaving with when they transfer to their 4-year school. And some are going to be well prepared, some are going to be just right prepared, and some are going to be underprepared, just like high school to college transition. So, I'm sure that'll be a topic that'll come up over and over. It's one of my pet peeves about assessment. And
I think we'll get into the outcomes, the APA outcomes for the APA 2.0 outcomes for the undergraduate.
What is the formal title on a green piece of paper with a green cover? APA goals for the undergraduate psychology major, version 2.0.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's it.
So I think one of the ways, if people who are listening who've never done this, one of the ways that we can be more thoughtful about these 5 goals is to tie them into our course outcomes and make sure that we're assessing those outcomes, throughout a student's psychology classes. You're thinking hard.
Well, you can tell with the mouth open, right? That's the cue. Well, I'm just thinking that you just brilliantly thought of at least 5 podcast guests to bring on. We could bring on folks from those 5 groups who worked on assessment in Green Bay, as well as so there's the 1.0 crew who actually did the goals. Oh, let's see. They started their work in the 90s. It was approved in 2007. Although it took a while to get through APA governance. And then you've got the 2.0 group that I was a part of. And so I wasn't a part of the original 1.0 group. And so we've got lots of possible people to talk about who can give us the inside scoop. At some point, at least one or multiple episodes of this, we'll have Jane Hallinan on. And so we'll bend her ear because she's got some good stories to tell.
Does she?
Yeah, because she knows just about everybody. And she has a really great relationship with Bill McKeechee, and so they started collaborating. I want to say in the 80s at some point, and I think they were doing some stuff overseas for teaching and learning centers, and they were traveling together, and I think they just really had a very serendipitous relationship. And he of his generation, he's the master of the teaching of psychology. I'm not so sure there was anybody else on the planet who did it as well as he did. His teaching tips is at least in the 12th edition, if not the 13th edition.
Yeah, I think I have 2 copies of the same edition because I bought it twice because I didn't know if I had it, so I just rebought it because I thought I must have this book.
And I'm really blessed that not only do I have a copy of it, but he signed it for me. So that's one of those treasures that you keep forever.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's great.
So what else, Garth? What are we forgetting? You're the taskmaster. How are we doing?
Well, I think we're pretty much set to wrap this thing up for today and for this second episode.
We need a tagline. We're not going to have one yet, but we need a tagline. Some podcasts have there's a saying that they have their guests say at the very end.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of the West Wing Weekly, so I watched the West Wing when it was on originally. I watched the DVD series over and over, and their tagline is they have the guests say this very special line that the President Bartlett, Martin Sheen said on the show, "What's next?" And so they always have the guests say, "What's next?" And so we'll have to come up with some ubiquitous saying in psychology that's everywhere, and we'll have our.
Maybe we can get somebody to pay us to say that.
Oh, you mean the PsychSessions Conversations About Teaching and Stuff podcast sponsored by Diet Mountain Dew. You mean that kind of sponsor?
You always got to find a way to put it in there.
Yeah, I'm addicted in the best possible way.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.